Hi, this is Sue here. I just wanted to pop on here and tell you a little bit more about my heart health journey. I want to take you back to December 21st, 2017. 2017. I was 63 years old and it was a rather shocking day for me. It was my grandson's 5th birthday and I had arrived from Spain the day before, where we'd been staying. And I'd been kind of feeling a little bit under par, below par in the morning of his birthday. And I actually put a sugar in my tea because I just thought perhaps it was like low blood sugar. But not something I would normally do, definitely not to have sugar in my tea. But as I progressed through that day, I felt out of sort again. My heart seemed to be racing a little bit more than it should do. I was wearing a device on my wrist at the time, and that allowed me to monitor what was going on. And, it kept on alerting me that there was something not quite right. So I suggested to my husband that he drive me to the local hospital in Romford in Essex. The only reason we chose to drive was because it was December 21st. And I was aware that the ambulances would probably be under huge stress because of the holidays. So we drove to the hospital, and it was during that trip to the hospital, which was only 30 minutes away, that I felt incredibly cold and clammy. I didn't have any pain, but I felt like I had slight indigestion. My husband literally said the colour drained from my face and obviously asked if I was all right. And I just said, no, I don't think so. And I think that's when I had my heart attack. On arrival at the hospital, I had to walk in because my husband had to go and park the car, which was away from the accident and emergency entrance. That was daunting just by itself. Bit of an ordeal to have to walk in by yourself. But as I walked into the waiting room, everyone's in party mode. They've got hats on, the blues, streamers, etc., because it's coming up to Christmas. A very sweet lady banged on the desk and said, "You need to see this lady because I don't think she is very well and you need to help her." And that's when they took me through to the triage, and which was really the start of my process of finding out whether I'd actually had a heart attack. They took the bloods and did all the tests that they felt were necessary to do. And they said, "You look pretty good, you look fine." And I said, "Well, I feel better than I did earlier, but I'm obviously very concerned that something's still not right." They suggested that I stay in overnight, and obviously that was in Romford Hospital, and probably my husband should go home because there was not really anything that he could do to help anymore. So he left the hospital and went home. About 20 minutes later, a doctor rushed in and told me that, "Right, we're taking you to St Bartholomew's in London and you're going in the ambulance right now. Where's your husband?" I said, "Well, he's gone home." So I've got no way of contacting him as I left my phone in the car. And it was just traumatic to say the least. So I was whisked off in the ambulance with the blues and twos going through the streets of London. And that in itself was dramatic, and stressful. I arrived in A&E at St Bartholomew's at about 12:30 at night. And as they were admitting me, I was told that they had someone who was coming in who was dead on arrival. And would I mind if they worked on him or her first? In this moment, I felt, okay. I said, "Yeah, that's fine. I feel all right." And she said, "It's your call because you were here first, and obviously you are our main priority." When that happened, it was a bit daunting, but an hour and a half later, I was having to sign my pre-op authorization sheets in preparation. I had to sign my life away, as I say, and that was probably the scariest thing I've ever had to do, because I thought, well, I haven't got any way of contacting my husband. I can't even say goodbye or wish me luck. I was in the middle of the night now and he would be sleeping. And here I was signing my life away. Obviously, complications can occur when you're going under operations, and it was a clear risk of death as well. And it was now the 22nd of December. And this was the anniversary of my father's death, which was even more traumatic for me. And with that, I said to the nurse, this is not a good day to die. So I signed the form. And then I was wheeled into the operating theatre where I had I think 6 doctors in total operating on me, doing an angioplasty, which was done through my vein in my wrist. I had 1 LAD blockage, which goes into the main heart artery, and around about an 88% blockage. And they put a stent in. They also put in 2 other stents, which was as a precaution because they said my arteries were naturally very narrow. The surgeon even said that they were almost like children's arteries. They were so small. So I've ended up with 3 stents in my chest area to prevent any further problems. Fortunately, there were no other blockages, and I'm very grateful for that, and took the operation, took around about 2.5 to 3 hours. I was then put into recovery on the cardiac ward, and the following morning, Professor Timmins, who did my surgery, said, well, you've had a very lucky escape, young lady, but you're not my normal candidate. You look pretty fit, you look healthy. And I said, I've never been ill, so never been on any medication, and this is a complete and utter shock to me that he said that, well, that's changed now because now you're going to be on drugs for the rest of life. I said if there was there an alternative, because I've never taken any medication before. And so first of all, I don't think he really believed the fact that I'd never taken any medication. So I said, please go check my notes. When he came back, he said, you're correct. You haven't taken any. So my first concern was that I was going to be having to be taking drugs for the rest of my life, which I really wasn't too happy about. I knew that it was important to have a drug regime while I recovered from this incident. So I was dispatched on Christmas Eve back to my family with 7 different medications, and I was in disbelief. I'd never been ill before. Really, I had robust health throughout the whole of my life and was now on drugs, possibly for the rest of my life. I knew there had to be another alternative solution. So I went home and I started that recuperation. I started my cardiac rehabilitation at the hospital. And when I say rehabilitation, I was dispatched, as I say, with a huge book, which is about 2 inches deep, which literally told me what to do, how to do it, when to do it on a daily basis. And I thought this was a kind of standard stuff, most exercise, diet-related information. My diet's always been really good. As a family, we've always eaten fresh foods, lots of fruit and vegetables, and very little processed food. I don't drink, I don't smoke. So all the things that you would normally put into that category of being vulnerable for heart failure and heart attack were not in my dietary lifestyles. I wanted to come off the drugs and find a way to do that without compromising the stents or raising the risk of having another heart attack. I started doing the research and alongside my husband, and one of the things that kept on coming up again and again was being able to reduce the viscosity of your blood naturally by having an omega-3 rich diet. Omega-3 is an essential fatty acid, as we all know. It can't be made in the body. We either have to consume it in our foods or we have to consume it within supplementations. Now, I'd studied nutrition years before, and I was aware of the importance of omega-3 for every single cell in the body. And so I had followed this regime throughout many years before through supplementation. So I thought I was covered. On reflection, I wasn't. I found that out 18 months later after having my heart attack. I did a test that actually assessed my omega-6-3 ratio, which showed that I was incredibly deficient in omega-3, despite having been on that supplementation for so many years. And especially the product that I'd been taking had been no use whatsoever. When you consider that I'd been taking it for 34 years, then it called into question absolutely everything that I had done previously. I was really shocked to think that I had wasted my well-earned money in supplements that were ineffective. I was actually quite cross. I then had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Paul Clayton, who asked about my health. I mentioned that I was on 7 different medications after a heart attack and that I was looking for a solution as I was not happy being on those drugs. Because apart from the side effects, I'd put on 25 pounds, which no woman wants to do, I can assure you. Even though I hadn't changed my diet, I was exercising moderately, I don't smoke, I didn't drink. Hearing what happened to me, he said, I think I can help you come off those medications within 6 months. I was now listening. This encounter really changed my life. I just asked him, what do I have to do? And he suggested a health protocol that I can say without any qualms whatsoever really changed my life. The first thing that happened was I had switched from my existing non-effective omega-3 to a unique blended omega-3 and polyphenol oil that I added to that, a prebiotic powder to address any dysbiosis I may have in my gut health. And then finally, I added in a multivitamin that actually time releases within the system. Within just 90 days, my blood pressure had come down dramatically, my heart rate had steadied, I felt alive again. And I've taken another test at 90 days to see the improvements because I was so concerned that it may have increased or gone down, but it had gone down from 14.4 to 4.4. So I dropped 10 points in 90 days. And then I took the initiative to start reducing my medication under supervision, very gradually. Everything else had improved. Brain fog had got better, clarity of thinking. I just looked better, felt better, and I'd lost those 22 pounds of the 25 that I'd put on previously. I started reducing that medication, as I say, very gradually. And it was a bit nerve-wracking, to say the least, because I'd used it as a safety blanket. But the confidence was that I knew that I'd already made improvements. I then did a further test another 5 weeks later, which was now down to 3.6. So the gradual decrease was not as dramatic as that first 3 months decrease, but it was still a decrease. And I was almost at the optimum 3-to-1 ratio where we should be. That's when I decided to stop the medication. And I think it's important to say at this point that I took that upon myself. I was determined to find a way to eliminate the drugs, but to do it under professional guidance. And this is my personal experience. And, I make no claims of what I've done is appropriate for everyone else. And after all, I think you know your own body better than anyone else. I still had the medications with me for the next 2 months as a security in case I felt it necessary to revert back to them. I'm extremely happy to say that I never used those again. I never touched them. And I've improved every measure, month after month, year after year. I stopped taking the medication in October 2019, and I'm still medication-free in May 2025. I've had regular checkups at the hospital with the ECGs, and which always show that I've got excellent heart health. My cholesterol level is manageable and pretty well normal. My blood pressure is fine. They're still trying to persuade me to go back onto statins, which I have declined gracefully. That's a story for another day, perhaps, but I had a minor operation on my hand earlier this year in 2025, and the pre-op checks that I went through, there's 100 questions, and they were shocked that a woman of 70 with no medication had blood pressure, my blood pressure was 120/65, which pleased me no end. So all round, I've made the decision not to take the medication for the rest of my life. And I'm a true believer that if our bodies are nourished in the right way and we take the right supplementation to, kind of make sure that our diet is everything, but we know that we actually don't have what we need in our diet anymore, your body can heal. Your body can do that. And I always make sure that everyone in a similar situation actually goes back to their healthcare practitioner to make sure that they have their guidance for your particular and unique circumstances. As I said, I'm not making any medical claims here. This is my personal journey and the one that I wanted to share with you and that I've decided is right for me. And I know there are going to be many, many other people looking to find solutions to problems they may be suffering with in a natural way, if possible. If this resonates with you, do reach out. I'd love to hear from you. And more importantly, I think it's a really great way to actually step forward and step into our own power of our amazing bodies that we have that actually can do the healing for ourselves.